First created being. Light bearer. Apostasy from God. BD number 5612. February 28, 1953. Your human intellect is only able to understand profound truth to a certain degree, because pure spirituality is only spiritually explainable. This explanation will be accepted by the spirit within you and indeed also passed on via the soul to the intellect, but the intellect is still too earthly minded and therefore cannot delve so deeply into spiritual knowledge to understand everything. Nevertheless, my spirit expresses itself through the spiritual spark within you, and anyone who has love will also understand the meaning of what I say to him. My creative will was immense, my strength inexhaustible, and I found my bliss in the implementation of my thoughts and plans. And this bliss wanted to express itself, my love wanted to give itself, I wanted another being beside me to also enjoy what made me indescribably happy. I experienced my solitude as a lack which I could change any time if I wanted to. And I wanted to rediscover myself in a being that should be closely united with me, which I wanted to shape as a mirror of myself, as my own image, to be able to bestow it with unlimited bliss and thereby increase my bliss too. I wanted to create such a being and this will sufficed, because my will was strength and always proceeded with love and wisdom. The entity I externalized from within myself was indeed my image, yet it could not see me. Had it been able to see me it would have ceased to exist due to its beatitude, since no being could endure to behold me. For every being, even the most perfect image of myself, is always just a product of my strength of love, whereas I am the strength of love myself and enlighten everything with incomparable intensity, but, as a result, I could not be endured by the being I had externalized. Yet by creating this being I had a vessel into which the strength of my love could flow continually, and thus it also received my creative will, my strength, my wisdom and my love beyond measure with this constant influx of strength from me. As a result, it was now able to experience the same bliss, it was able to use its strength in accordance with its own will, it could be creatively active for its own pleasure and thus constantly increase my bliss, because it was my strength which enabled the being to do so and I took pleasure in its happiness. And now countless other beings of the same nature emerged from this being. They all were children of my love in radiating light, in utmost perfection, because from the image I created of myself and my infinite love could only ever emerge utmost perfection, because we shared the same will. Both our love found itself again in the created beings, because nothing imperfect existed as long as my will and my love worked through this first created being. It was an enlightened world of spirits, there were a great number of originally created spirits. The strength from me flowed unrestricted to the being which I had chosen for myself as the bearer of light and strength. And the entity itself was more than blissfully happy. Yet I wanted to increase this bliss even more, I did not want it to be tied to my will but it should be active of its own will which, if the being was perfect and remained so, was my will. For the being, having been created by me, was incapable of having any other will. But I wanted it to be able to act independently. Because the only characteristic of a divine being is that love is so powerful within itself that it is the decisive factor for the same direction of will as mine. I wanted to receive this love from my first created being which, however, was intended to result in its ultimate perfection at the same time, so that it was no longer active as a created being in accordance with my will but should enjoy unlimited bliss by merging with my will for love of me. But in order to pass this test of love and will it had to have complete freedom of will. It did not see me but it recognized me because it was enlightened. However, it saw the countless beings created by its will, and it felt itself as their creator in spite of knowing that it had received its strength from me. And the entity was envious of my strength. Although it was visible to the beings it had created, it was nevertheless conscious of its origin from me, but it claimed the right to rule these beings for itself by presenting itself to them as the source of strength, as the only power able to create. It more than less denied to love me in order to rule. You humans cannot understand the process by which a self-aware being could transgress into completely wrong reasoning, but this is explained by free will which, in order to become active, must also be able but does not have to make a negative choice. The bearer of light and strength saw on the one side the evidence of strength conveyed through him, yet he did not see the source of strength itself. Thus he declared himself ruler over his created spirits and also tried to portray me as non-existent to them. He tried to transfer his now opposing will onto them. And now the moment of decision, of proving their perfection, also came for the beings who had been created by the bearer of light with the use of my strength. My strength was inherent in all these beings, they were fully enlightened and aglow with love for me, whom they could not see but nevertheless recognize. But they also loved their Creator, because the strength that had created them was love which had emanated from the first created being and enabled it to create. This love now had to make a choice, and it divided itself. Terrible confusion occurred amongst the spirits who felt urged to make a decision. But, since my strength of love was effectively light, it was understandable that the urge towards the primary source of strength was stronger in many beings, that their love diminished for the one who separated from me and pushed towards me with increased force. For the light within them was the realization that I was eternal love. Every being had this knowledge indeed, but it also had free will which did not depend on knowledge, or it would not have been free. And the spiritual world divided itself. The externalized being had its followers just as I had mine, even though I was not visible. But the effect of my strength was so powerful that many beings turned away from the one who wanted to oppose me. Their will remained in the right direction, whereas the bearer of light and his followers directed their will wrongly, thus they volitionally separated from me and this caused their fall into the abyss. Thus the light bearer, the fully illuminated being externalized by me, became my adversary, whereas everything that had emerged from him, that was created by both our love, partly turned towards me and partly towards him, depending on the glow of love by which it was permeated. As soon as the bearer of light separated from me, the beings experienced an undefined desire for a definite pole. Free will began to unfold itself. Neither I nor my adversary influenced them forcefully, they were merely exposed to both our emanation of strength which wanted to gain every being for itself. The flow of my strength was pure love and affected the beings so intensely that they recognized me without seeing me, but they could also recognize the first created being's change of will. However, because they could see this entity, many followed it, i.e. they subordinated themselves to its will and thus distanced themselves from me. Yet other originally created beings felt themselves as my children and voluntarily remained loyal to me, only they were far less in number. These were the first created beings who arose from my light-bearer's most blissful creative will and my immense influx of strength of love. And this strength of love was inherent in these beings too and persistently pushed them towards me, for they recognized their Creator's present will as wrong and therefore turned away from him. The other beings could have come to this realization too, yet they blindly followed the one they could see, and their will was respected and in no way influenced by me, because this decision of will had to take place in order to shape the created beings to independent perfection. The being which left me drew a large number of followers into the abyss, for to distance oneself from me means to strive towards the abyss, to aim towards a completely opposite state, which thus signifies darkness and weakness, loss of knowledge and strength. Whereas my children blissfully remained in the most radiant light and immense strength, in beatitude. After the fall of Lucifer, the light-bearer, his strength was defeated. He could no longer actively create and shape, although I did not withdraw the strength from him because he was my living creation. His power and strength rested in his followers, whom he now dominated as Prince of Darkness. But they are also the products of my love which I will not leave to my adversary forever. As long as these beings still share his will they belong to him, but as soon as I succeed in turning their will towards me he has lost them, and thus his strength diminishes at the same rate as I release his prisoners from his control, which, however, always presupposes the being's free will. And this is the purpose of my eternal plan of salvation, which is eagerly and most lovingly supported by all inhabitants of the kingdom of light, by my angels and archangels, for they all are my helpers who endeavor to bring bliss again to their fallen brothers, who once voluntarily threw it away. And this work of liberation will succeed, even if it takes an infinitely long time before the last once fallen spirit returns to me, until even the first created being that came forth from my love draws closer to me again in its longing for my love. Until this too repentantly returns to the Father's house, which it once left voluntarily. Amen.